My name is Emily. I am 29 years old. I live in New York. I work for a big tech company. I got the job last year. I was happy when I joined. I worked very hard to get there. I studied computer science in college. I always wanted to work in tech. But after some time, I saw the truth. Almost everyone on my team was a man. I was the only woman. That was not easy. No one said bad words to me, but I felt left out. The men spoke to each other. They shared jokes and ideas. They ate lunch together. They did not invite me. They did not ask me for my thoughts. They did not look at me when I spoke in meetings. They acted like I was not there. I tried to stay calm. I did not want to cry. I smiled and kept working. I wanted to show them I was smart. I wanted to earn their respect. But it was hard. My manager was named Steve. He was polite, but he gave me only small jobs. He asked me to take notes, book rooms, or print papers. I wanted more. I wanted real work. One day, Steve told us something new. He said, "A client from California is coming next week. We will have a big meeting. This client is very important. Everyone must help." The office got busy. Everyone was excited. I asked, "Can I help with the report?" Steve looked at me and said, "You can take notes during the meeting." I said, "Okay." But inside, I felt sad. I knew I could do more. That night, I called my best friend Rachel. She works at a different company. I told her everything. She said, "You have to show them who you are. Do something. Don't wait for them." I asked, "What can I do?" She said, "Make your own work. Prove it." Her words stayed in my mind. I could not sleep. I kept thinking. The next morning, I came to work early. I made a plan. I opened my laptop and started typing. I wanted to help with the client project, even if no one asked me. I looked at old files. I read notes from past projects. I found good ideas. I made charts. I wrote simple words. I kept it clear and short. I worked every day on it. I stayed late in the office. I skipped lunch sometimes. No one knew I was doing it. Then Friday came, the day of the briefing. Everyone wore nice clothes. Some men wore ties. The office felt different. People were quiet. At 11 a.m., we all walked into the big meeting room. The table was long. There were many chairs. The client joined us on a big screen. I looked around the room. I saw 11 men. I was the only woman. Steve started the meeting. He gave a short welcome. Then he asked, "Who wants to speak first?" One man spoke about numbers. Another showed a system map. A third man talked about timelines. I listened. I waited. My heart was beating fast. Then Steve said, "What's next?" I stood up. I said, "I made something for the client." He looked surprised. "Go ahead," he said. I walked to the front. I plugged in my laptop. I showed my slides. I said, "This plan shows the risks and how to fix them." I used past project data. It is easy to follow. I showed one slide at a time. I spoke slowly. I used simple words. I pointed to the colors. I explained how each part worked. The client watched. No one in the room made a sound. When I finished, I looked at the client. He smiled. He said, "This is very clear. I like it." Steve nodded. He said, "Good job, Emily. We will use your slides." I sat back down. My hands were cold, but I felt strong inside. After the meeting, some team members came to me. One man said, "You did great." Another said, "That was the best part of the meeting." Even Steve smiled at me and said, "Thanks for stepping up." I walked back to my desk. I sat down and opened my laptop. I looked outside the window. The sky was bright. The streets were full of cars. I felt calm. I felt proud. For the first time, they saw what I could do. Later that day, something small happened. I was in the kitchen making coffee. One man from the team came in. His name was James. He worked there for 10 years. He said, "Nice slides today." I said, "Thank you." Then he said, "You were right to speak up. We needed that." That meant a lot to me. When I got home that night, I felt tired, but I also felt happy. I called Rachel. I told her what happened. She said, "See? I told you." I laughed. "Yes, you did," I said. That weekend, I thought a lot. I knew one good meeting would not change everything. I knew the team still had a long way to go. But something had started. I was not invisible anymore. I had a voice. And now, they had heard it. The next Monday, I came to work early again. I made a coffee and walked to my desk. Steve passed by. He stopped and said, "Client liked your work. Good job." I smiled and said, "Thank you." That day, during lunch, 2 team members asked me to sit with them. We talked about the next project. They asked for my ideas. That was new. That felt good. I was still the only woman on the team. That part did not change. But something else changed. Now they knew I could lead. I did not need to shout. I just needed to show my work. I learned something that week. I learned I had power. Quiet power. The kind that comes from doing good work, even when no one is watching. I learned that I did not have to be loud. I just had to be clear. I just had to be myself. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. After the meeting on Friday, things began to change. The change was small, but I felt it. On Monday, my team looked at me differently. They spoke to me more. They asked for my help. They said, "Good morning," when I walked in. That never happened before. I was still quiet. I still worked hard. But now they saw me. They knew I had something to offer. I was no longer just the girl on the team. I was part of the team. That felt good. That week, Steve gave me a new job. He said, "The client liked your work. They asked for a second plan. Can you write it?" I smiled and said, "Yes, I can." I was excited, but I was also nervous. I wanted to do well again. I started working on the new plan right away. I looked at the notes from the first meeting. I read the client's emails. I asked clear questions. I made charts and wrote simple reports. I made sure every word was easy to understand. At lunch, I stayed at my desk. I ate my sandwich and kept working. I did not want to stop. I wanted to do my best. Rachel sent me a message. "Take a break," she said. I laughed but kept going. By Thursday, I finished the plan. I sent it to Steve. 1 hour later, he came to my desk. He said, "This is excellent. Very clean. Very useful." I felt proud. I said, "Thank you." Then he said something more. "I want you to join the next meeting. You'll share your plan." My eyes got wide. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes. Be ready for Monday." That weekend, I worked on my slides. I wanted them to be clear. I wanted the words to be simple. I wanted to speak slowly and with confidence. I practiced in front of my mirror. I smiled. I fixed my words. I made each line short and easy. I told myself, "You can do this." On Monday, I wore a blue dress and a black jacket. I brushed my hair neatly. I walked into the office early. I printed the plan. I checked the slides one more time. I took a deep breath and walked into the meeting room. The client was already on the screen. They smiled and said, "Good morning." Steve spoke first. He said, "Emily will lead this part of the talk today." I stood up. My heart was beating fast. My hands felt cold. But I smiled and began. I showed the first slide. "This is our new plan," I said. "It is based on your feedback." Then I showed each part. I used easy words. I looked at the camera. I did not speak too fast. I paused after each slide. The client asked one question. I answered it clearly. Then the client said, "Thank you, Emily. That was very clear." I sat down and smiled. Steve gave me a thumbs up under the table. After the meeting, Steve called me to his office. He said, "You did well. You're ready for more." I said, "Thank you, Steve." He said, "I want to give you a bigger role in the next project." This time, I did not feel scared. I felt ready. Later that day, I got an email from HR. It was for a Women in Tech event. The subject said, "Mentoring Lunch, Women in Engineering." I clicked on it. It said, "Join us for lunch and mentoring. Hear from women leaders in our company." I thought about it. I had never joined these events before. I always felt shy, but now I felt different. I clicked yes. I marked the date on my calendar. On Friday, I walked into the lunchroom. There were about 20 women. Some were older, some were young like me, some worked in coding, some worked in design. We all had the same story. We were often the only woman in the room. One woman spoke to us. Her name was Laura. She was a team leader. She said, "Years ago, I felt very alone. I had ideas, but no one listened. But I did not stop. Now I lead a team of 50 people." Everyone clapped. Then she looked around the room. She said, "Do not wait for permission. Speak up. Do your work well. Be proud." Her words stayed with me. After the event, I walked back to my desk. One of the women from lunch was there too. Her name was Mia. She worked in design. She smiled and said, "Nice to meet you, Emily." I said, "You too." Later, she sent me a message. If you ever need help with design, let me know. I replied, "Thanks. Same to you." That message felt good. It felt like support. The next week, Steve asked me to join a new client project. This time, I was not just making slides. I was in charge of the whole presentation. I had to work with 2 other people. One was Dan, and the other was Mike. At first, they did not say much to me, but I stayed friendly. I asked questions. I shared ideas. After 2 days, Dan sent me a message. "Your draft looks great," he said. "Thanks for leading this." I said, "I'm happy to help." Slowly, I saw things were getting better. It did not happen fast. It did not happen easily. But it happened. I kept showing up. I kept doing good work. I stayed calm. I stayed kind. People started to see me. They started to trust me. Now, I get invited to more meetings. People ask me for ideas. They say thank you. They give credit. I am still the only woman on my team, but I do not feel alone anymore. Sometimes I still feel nervous. Sometimes I still feel small. But I remember what Rachel said. You don't have to be loud. You just have to be strong. And I am strong. I know it now. One morning, Steve came to my desk. He looked serious but not angry. He said, "The head office wants a new product demo. You will lead it." I was quiet for a second. Then I said, "Okay, I'll do it." He said, "It will be next Friday. We need a strong pitch." I said, "I understand." When he walked away, I felt nervous. This was the biggest task I ever had. It was not just a slideshow. It was a live demo of our new software. The room would have directors, team leads, and people from the product team. Some were from our San Francisco office. I knew I had to do my best. I made a list of what I needed. I talked to our product engineer, Josh. He helped me understand the system. I asked the marketing team for support. I also asked Mia from design to help with the look. She said yes right away. I worked all day and sometimes stayed late. I wanted the demo to be simple and smart. I wrote every word with care. I tested the software 10 times. I even showed it to Rachel on video. She said, "It's perfect. You look like a leader." The night before the demo, I barely slept. I checked my slides again and again. I checked my voice, my timing, my notes. I looked in the mirror and said, "You can do this." The next morning, I wore my best gray blazer. I took a deep breath and went to work early. I walked into the meeting room at 9:30 a.m. The demo was at 10. The chairs were slowly filling up. My hands were cold, but my heart was steady. At 10 a.m., Steve stood and said, "Today, Emily will present our new product." I stood up. I walked to the front. I plugged in my laptop. I looked at the room. "Good morning," I said. "Thank you for being here. Today I will show you something new." I showed the first screen. Then I clicked through the demo. I explained the system. I showed how fast it was, how easy it looked, how useful it would be for our users. I moved slow. I used short words. I made eye contact. People started to lean forward. They nodded. One person wrote notes. Another smiled. Then I asked, would anyone like to try it? A woman from the San Francisco team raised her hand. She walked up and used the tool. It worked well. She looked at me and said, "Very nice." I smiled and said, "Thank you." At the end, I clicked to the last slide. "That's our demo," I said. "I hope it showed how much we care about our work." The room clapped. Steve looked proud. The director from San Francisco said, "That was excellent. Very clear and useful." After the meeting, people came to me. They asked questions. They gave kind words. Someone said, "That's the best demo we've seen this year." I felt light inside. I had done it. I had led a room full of experts. I had not just been part of the meeting. I had owned it. Later that day, Steve called me to his office. He said, "Emily, I'm proud of you." I said, "Thank you." Then he said something I didn't expect. "We want to give you a raise and a new title. You'll be a project lead now." I felt warm all over. I said, "Really?" He said, "You earned it." I walked back to my desk and sent a message to Rachel. "I got promoted!" She replied with 10 happy faces and said, "You did it! I'm so proud." That night, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea. I thought about my first weeks at the company. I remembered the silence, the looks, the way they ignored me. And now, I was a lead. I had a voice. I had respect. But the story did not end there. 1 week later, something hard happened. A junior woman named Olivia joined the team. She was young, new, and full of ideas. I saw how the men acted around her. They smiled, but they did not listen. They made her take notes. They said things like, "Let the new girl handle that." I saw myself in her. One day after a meeting, she looked upset. I walked up to her. I said, "Want to grab a coffee?" She said, "Sure." We sat in the break room. I said, "It gets better." She looked at me. "Really?" she asked. I said, "It did for me. You just need to keep going. Do good work. Speak when you can. And don't be afraid." She smiled. "Thank you," she said. I needed to hear that. After that, we talked more. I helped her with her reports. She helped me with new tools. She started to smile more. She started to speak in meetings. I saw her grow. One day she said to me, "Because of you, I didn't quit." That meant more than any raise or title. Sometimes being the only woman in the room is lonely. But if you stay strong, things change. And when you become strong, you can help others too. That's what I learned. I stayed in that company for 2 more years. I led more projects. I trained new hires. I joined a group to support women in tech. I gave talks. I wrote tips. I shared my story. Then I got a new offer. A bigger company. A better title. A chance to grow even more. I took it. On my last day, the team gave me a card. Inside it said, "Thanks for making this team better." Steve shook my hand. "We'll miss you," he said. Olivia hugged me. "Go lead them too," she whispered. I walked out of the building with my head high. It started with silence. It started with fear. But I spoke up. I showed what I could do. I earned my place. I was the only woman in the room. Now, I am the woman they remember. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon.